can you confirm once again, you can hear me okay and you see my first slide?
Yes, to both, Glenn.
Okay, great. All right, let me add my thanks to Jerry, to all of you who are out there, and I appreciate you coming out and spending 30 or 40 minutes here with me to talk about some enhancements and improvements we've made to our product standalone environment. Glad to see there's a great number of you that are customers of either SAE or the integrity controls environment, image focus, control editor, it might be the product names you're more familiar with. But I'm glad to see you're out here. I'm going to update primarily on SAE, but I will talk a little bit about the other products because there's a relationship that's getting tighter between the various products we have within the ICE environment. And as Jerry said, as I go through this as an introduction or a high-level update, if you see something that you're most interested in and would like to learn more or take a deeper dive into what we're doing and how it works and that, let us know, and we're glad to arrange another webcast that gets into a much deeper level of detail for yourself or for your entire organization. So this is meant to be kind of introductory and an update, but we can certainly schedule and give you all the detail and all the information you require. So as you know, those of you who are customers and for those of you who are not, SAE has been around for a long time, as well as the other products, Image Focus and the Control Editor within this integrity controls environment. We started our product some 30 plus years ago with SAE, then it was called Standalone Edit, because that's basically what it did. It still does, gives you the ability to bring up an editor without an operating system and correct failures, correct problems at IPL time. Still very much the most essential part of the product, although there's more capability in it now, and I'll touch on that as we go forward. But throughout all those years of 30 plus years of service that we've provided in software, our goal has always remained the same, which is to help you provide an environment that's more safe, more secure, has intense integrity, and is ready when it's called upon to be executed or used or to bring up an IPL or whatever you need to do, and give you the tools and the services in order to protect it, to evaluate it, to understand and track changes, and to meet your various requirements from your organization. So having said all that, that's what we're about. We're there to help you do all those things that you need to do. And we help you do them in a way that addresses what might be thought of as just best practices. In other words, are you always making a backup when you should be? Are you telling everybody on the team that you've taken some action? Do you have restore points created? Do you have the ability to document all your changes? And there's an audit trail of those different versions that are being created. And are they being reviewed? And does everybody know what's going on? So these are services that we provide across the full spectrum of the products within the integrity controls environment. Some are done by Image Focus, some are done by the control editor, and they all can be acted upon and, if you will, rescued by SAE, which is what the three companion products are all about here. So I want to talk a little bit about both Image Focus and the control editor first, because there's enhancements in those that directly tie it closer to the standalone environment, or SAE. Now, Image Focus, for those of you who are not familiar with it, basically it performs something we refer to as an inspection. It looks at a start point. Think of it as an IPL address and load parm, and it processes down through the IPL logically in order to determine if all the components are there, everything's defined correctly, there's no syntax errors, there's no missing data sets, there's no reference for a PROG member that doesn't exist. And lately we've added some more capability to it, looking at things like the policy agent inside TCP/IP or pageant, looking for possible add-ins within programs that come from authorized libraries or from started tasks that are you named to us, to see if there's any possible add-ins in those programs, like SO47, 806s, those kind of things. And newly to be released next week in patch 8 for Image Focus will be the ability to inspect the CSF PRM XX member. And this is going to be the first introduction into our ability to actually inspect ICSF. So you can see we're expanding this. This includes the subsystems, the critical subsystems like VTAM, JES, TCP/IP, obviously, and even the CICS startup of the CICS regions. The inspections can run in a variety of ways, and they all can create out history and information. And that's really where the tie comes in to SAE. Image Focus has always had the ability to run a process of monitoring, where it would run on a timer basis and go out and detect the state of a particular configuration. In other words, identify any risk or problems, but also detect changes. And if there was a change detected, create out what we referred to at that time and still do as a blueprint. And we would have different versions of this blueprint stored over time. And the compare was done automatically by that started task. That's still within the product and still functioning. And a lot of our people incorporate and use that on a regular basis. But we've added the ability not only to run that in batch, but now we've added 2 more batch jobs to Image Focus. Both of them provide the same level of inspection, ICE BAT and SAE BAT A. What they do is they run an inspection whenever the batch job executes. The difference between what it's doing and that monitoring task that I described is it's a single point in time analysis. So when a job executes, it will go off and run an inspection and create out a log identifying all the componentry and the results of the inspection, telling us of any problem that it found or any concern that exists within that construct that it inspected. Additionally, it stores off a copy of all the elements that were inspected. So these become a single point in time record created by both the evaluation and by the content and stored away into a data set. So in the case of SAE BAT A, what we have the ability to do then is later on, I'll show you, SAE can now call in that record that was created, both the inspection log and the copy of the members, the way they were created, and run a compare against the current state of those same members in order to identify what may have changed. So we have the ability now to say immediately after a successful IPL, you run a batch job and you create out what we think of simply as a baseline. This is the way the members looked at the point in time the system was last IPL'd. Then the next IPL, if there's a failure, you can go to SAE and say, get that last blueprint or baseline you have and tell me what the differences are. And so this is being introduced in patch 8 as well as these batch jobs to give you that additional point in time record and reference. Now, the control editor is another product within the integrity controls environment. And again, those of you who are familiar with it, bear with me. Those of you who are not, what it's basically designed to do is to give you the ability to control access and see changes made to critical data sets as they occur. So unlike the monitor aspect of Image Focus that I spoke of that runs on a timer, this is the control editor is looking for each event where the content is being altered. So if the one is running on a daily basis every afternoon at 4 in Image Focus, it will tell you what's changed from 4 o'clock yesterday to 4 o'clock today. The control editor will tell you that it was changed 4 times today and have a record of all 4 of those and give you a great deal more targets to monitor for changes. And it gives you a great deal of capability of controlling access as well. One of the things that have been introduced recently in the control editor is something called multi-factor edit. That allows you to assign additional password or tokens generated by the external security managers that require the user either provide information in concert with that token generation or use the entire token generated in order to get in and allow access. So there's controls put in place. And what these controls will help you to do is help you establish a zero trust architecture if that's something that's they're starting to discuss and implement within your organizations. There's email notifications, there's a standard document forms that have to be filled out when events occur. All of this is being enforced by the control editor, and it automatically makes a backup every time a change is made. So again, enforcing those best practices that I spoke about before, which also means that in a standpoint of standalone environment, if you need to restore a member back, the control editor has that for you. And you can see that content and perhaps restore it back, or you can get it from the Image Focus backup if it's a Palm Lab member that's part of the IPL structure. So it gives you a lot of capability. And again, this is storing away by the control editor. But today we're really here to talk more about the standalone environment product. But like I said, one of the things I wanted to do is let you know that there is a tightening of the relationship between the other products within the integrity controls environment and SAE. Now, SAE, again, just to quickly cover what its capabilities are, it's there really to help you recover and repair from some failure that occurred at IPL time. So if you've got a Parm Lab member that has a syntax error, or there's a reference to a data set that's required, or there's an error in your TCP/IP DAC and you can't get the network up, or whatever the problem is, you can quickly IPL SAE, use its ability to go out and find things and fix them. It's a single user, single use interface that looks just like ISPF, that lets you edit data sets, rename data sets, update catalog pointers, copy between data sets, copy between our data sets between volumes. So you can really get past any kind of a failure that may exist, and you need to get it done quickly and efficiently. And that's what SAE is about. It always has been. And it's still, if you will, one of the insurance policies that a lot of our customers have had for many years, for those 30 years that I talked about, and they refuse to give it up because it has saved them somewhere in their life cycle, or it's been a problem that they've been able to recover from, or they test it frequently and have a high level of confidence in its ability to help them in case a problem comes along. But what we've added to it are now a couple of new things. One, the change detection services. Again, that's the interface back to that new batch job, SAE BAT A, that gives us the ability to pull in that reference point or that document or and those backups that were created when that point in time execution of that batch job, and be able to use that to compare against the current state of the same members in order to identify what may have changed that's causing the problem, and give you the ability to quickly edit it, fix it, and get on it and get the IPL back up. The other major improvement is has to deal with the fact that we can now allow SAE to talk directly back to the integrated console on the HMC, or SysG, as most people call it, and give you the ability to actually use that as the vehicle to run that ISPF-like interface and give you the ability to use all the SAE services. So let me explain that a little bit more. Traditionally, SAE would be installed onto a DASD device, although it could be on a network file or it could have been on a CD file, and IPL'd into an existing LPAR definition. But that LPAR definition would have required a locally attached 3270 terminal in order for SAE to establish communications back and forth to the user, which meant that each one of those individual LPARs had to have access to that local 3270 terminal. We heard from our customers saying, look, we love SAE, it's a great tool, it's saved us over the years, but that requirement is something that's getting hard to live with. And we need to find something better in order to use SAE in a more efficient, more modern way. And so what we did is, with significant investment and research, we found a way to have SAE communicate back to the integrated console, or SysG, on the HMC, which now meant that we could IPL SAE either from a DASD device on each one of these LPARs, or we could still IPL it from a CD or from a network file, or now a USB stick, since some of the HMCs do allow you to use a USB stick, and have the entire product included there. So there was no need to install the software on each of those LPAR targets. And by coming back to SysG, we wouldn't need the local 3270 terminal any longer, which meant that we could actually walk up to any HMC and IPL SAE without any pre-installed software anywhere and without any local requirements on those LPARs. And that's been a major enhancement or modernization that we've done to SAE. And I'll show you a brief demonstration of how that works. But it really makes it much more flexible, much more capable in an emergency situation to get after any place where there might be a problem and solve it using SAE. Now, those of you who are SAE customers, there are some new keywords within the options job. I wanted to point these out because it gives you the ability to control the use of SysG. The way the default is, it's going to try it first. So if you IPL SAE, it's going to look for SysG first and try to communicate with it. If it fails, then it's going to go on in its normal method, which is looking for a locally attached 3270 that provides an interrupt and then start talking to it. Or you can enable a function that says, I want to be able to specify whether or not I want it to go to sysg. So in which case you code the second value, which is enable, where then you would have to supply a load parm when you IPL SAE to direct it to go back to the sysg. The third option is saying, I don't want this ever to go out there, so I'm going to disable that. And then the traditional method of looking for an interrupt from a local 3270 still exists. You can still IPL it from a network file or for a USB stick or whatever. But the idea is now it's going to look for that locally attached terminal. So that's the way it always worked, and it will continue to work that way. So just be aware of this when you run the options job when you get release 17, which is where this will also be released next week. And this will be the new steps within the option job. There's also a couple more additional keywords in there that I'll point out as we get deeper into this. But again, what's important is that you remember now, you don't have to install this on every target LPAR where you potentially need it. You still can put it on DASD volume on every LPAR and make sure you can IPL from it, or you can still use tape if you want. But keep in mind that maybe the best solution is to look for some type of an external target for the SAE product and be able to IPL from that target in order to take advantage of using the integrated console as the communications vehicle for it. So these gives you, again, flexibility and more usability of the product. Now, once it's IPL, this is the first screen for those of you who aren't familiar with it. And again, this is release 17. So this will be the new release available on Monday. So we'll be able to pull it down and get access to it. And once you IPL it, this is, like I said, the very first panel. And the new services show up here under option 4, which is detect changes. And these are the ones that use either the baselines created by the new batch job, or they can use those blueprints I mentioned from Image Focus. So if you are running Image Focus background, or IFOBG is its default name, and creates out those different versions of backups that it's created in its blueprinting process, you can also access those through SAE. So now you have potentially 2 different targets that you can use for comparison going forward with SAE in order to determine the difference between the current operational state of these members and the state that was created when that baseline or blueprint was created. And so it's a very powerful tool in addition to SAE to give you the ability to look for those changes so you know where to go and figure out what might be broken and what's caused the IPL to fail. And the way this is done is, again, you can specify the index for the blueprint. This is a data set that is created by Image Focus, and it would then have all the history and all the different versions of the blueprints created. And then once you select one, it would go off and do its comparison and show you member by member if there were differences or changes made from the time the blueprint was created to the current version of that same member. And again, with blueprints, you can go back as far back in history as you want. It'll be a selection menu, and you'll be able to see all the history and all the prior versions. If we use the output from the batch job, which is here, it's a similar panel, but now we're looking at baseline comparisons. And then we come in and we're now looking at that single point in time when that baseline was created. Now, obviously, since these are data sets, you can get into different generation naming and things like that if you want. But the batch job itself creates out a new data set every time it executes. So it is a single point in time reference that's going to store away. And with SAE, you can, again, code this into the options job, as well as the blueprint index data set I showed you on the prior slide. They can be coded into the options job, so they're hard coded, and then you can proceed. You can hard code also a suffix like, or excuse me, a prefix like this that says, well, I'm not sure which LPAR it's coming from, so I'm just going to give you the first 2 levels, and then the third level would be actually the system name, and then carry it on for date and time and other information below it. And then by coding it this way, it would actually come back and give you a list of all the different baselines it has available to you. So that's what this is showing me here. So not only do I have baselines created from system A, B, C, and D, but I actually have two versions of it stored on two different volumes, and maybe they're coming from two different sysplexes or different points in time, however I want to manage this. But I now have access to multiple records that were created out and give me the ability to go off and pick any one of those in order to run my comparison. In addition to that, I have the inspection log that was created at that same moment in time when the batch job executed. And again, those of you who are familiar with image focus, you know that that log is very complete, very comprehensive in its analysis of what it found during its inspection. So it'll tell you if a member has a missing comma, or if it couldn't find a data set, or if a symbol didn't get processed correctly through a member, or whatever the problem may be, would be identified within the log. So if you're not sure what you need to go research, you can look at the log and it will tell you at the moment when that log was created, these were the issues or the problems that existed. So SAE now has access to all of that knowledge created by the image focused batch jobs. So again, SAE is what we're here talking about. And I want to show you just briefly what I've been preaching about here a little bit. So I switched over to a 3270 screen. Jerry, I assume you can see that?
Yes, I can, Glenn.
Okay, great. So this is SAE. And so I've IPL'd it. You can see here, I'm actually directed it back. I'm on the integrated console sysg here. I'm running under VM on a little test system, but I've been able to assign the integrated console back to this port. And now I'm in here and I'm doing whatever I need to do to fix it. SAE is very simple, but again, I've got a very limited system here. You'll see that very shortly. So I just said I want to do action services. So this would be if I wanted to rename something or edit something or make some other changes in order to get past some type of a failure. By simply hitting enter, it will go off and look for a volume list. I've been in here before, so it's already constructed it, but otherwise it comes back and builds a new list of all the volumes that this particular LPAR has access to. From that, I can select which one I want to deal with. On the prior panel, I could restrict that. I have all kinds of Boolean logic I can apply to the search. So this range, but not those devices, are only between 500 and 700 and whatever kind of control I want. And so it builds a very exact list for me. And once we're here, you'll see it's much like any other ISPF panel interface. So I can come down and find a particular data set. If I want to select that or edit that, I can select it. SAE does have the ability to put its own security in. By default, there's security when you try to access it. You can tighten that up, you can relax it, you can do whatever you want on different services within the product. See if I got this right. Okay, and so now I'm in, and again, I just simply select and edit the member that I want. I can rename it, I can delete it, I can add new members, I can copy, all the normal services. And actually there's help on almost all the panels to let you know what you can and cannot do and what the various commands are. So again, the last thing you want to do is when you got a problem and you're trying to recover from it, you don't want to have to go pull out a book to try to figure out what the right commands are. They're all helped here and give you the ability to do them directly from here. I can select this for edit. I'm in an edit screen. I take a change to my member and I'm done. And the member's been saved and I now have corrected that problem or put the comma in or put the continuation in or I can rename it, the data set or the member or whatever I need to do to solve that problem. So that's basically it. And again, this is the panel where I can put all my Boolean logic in to refine the search. I can combine these things. So certain units, only if they have a certain data set name and all kinds of other services. So this is something that if you're really interested in it, as I said at the very beginning, and you want to do a deeper dive on some of this stuff, come back and I'll be glad to do that for you and get into more examples. But I did want to show you the new services. So again, it was option 4. And in this case, if I go to the blueprint, this is where I would specify the blueprint created by IFOBG for the background task from image focus. I'd point this to the index data set, and from there, I would have access to all of the history and versions stored by that monitoring task that's gone out and run and done the monitoring for me and storing away the different blueprints. If I choose baseline, what I'm after now are those moment in time records created by that SAE Bat A job and store it away. And so this is now I've wildcarded this. So I've got two of them out there, one from system D and one from system E. And if I select this, it's going to tell me, all right, this is what you're looking at. Is that the one you want? And if it is, I can begin the comparison. I'm going to warn you right here. As you saw, I'm on a very limited system with only 2 volumes. So this is going to come back with a lot of strange results, but I'll show you a live example here of what I'm talking about. It's going to run a comparison, and it's going to go through and look at all these members. Now, this volume is not available to me, so they, on my little test, and in a normal situation, they would be, and I'd be able to run my comparison. So if I go down, I can see here on this prog A0 that I do have it on the right volume, the same volume that I am on, so I can do my comparison. And if I do this, I can see the comparison that was done. It's a simple compare, and it'll show me the difference between what was stored in the baseline and the current version of this member. And I can see maybe I'm missing a critical data set, or maybe it's moved to a different volume, or whatever has occurred that may be causing a failure for this particular IPO. So that's the idea of this comparison and being able to understand where the problem might exist that I'm trying to solve. And the same thing is true for the log. So this would be the full inspection log that was created on this system. And let's see if I got this one out there. Okay, so in this case, I selected a different member. This is prog CS, and this is the content of it. And this is the analysis of that particular member. I chose this one because it's much larger. You can see it's going through and validating all the statements syntactically, and then it's going to go see if it can find all those data sets. This was all done by the inspection process done by the batch job. So SAE is not doing this. What SAE is doing is looking at that reference point created by the batch job for either comparison or for analysis. And you can see that there were some problems and concerns in here where we had some data sets referenced that didn't exist. And so that's the idea of this, is being able to look at that history and knowledge. Okay, so that's kind of the quick run through on SAE. And again, it's there to help you solve a problem. You can IPL it from a lot of different places. Acts just like ISPF. You can edit PDFs or sequential data sets, rename data sets, zap data sets, zap load modules, do whatever you want. It's got a lot of capability. It actually gives you the ability to update it and replace in place. So if you're out of storage somewhere, it'll actually put it back into the same location on the DASD drive. So it's really quite complete and competent and capable. It doesn't require any other services from the operating system. So it doesn't do catalog lookups unless you ask it to go to a catalog and look at something. So it finds everything by dealing directly with the hardware and gives you the ability to have access to anything on those DASD devices in order to make your changes. And then again, we got the new detection services and the ability to use SysG on the integrated console of the HMC. So that's the kind of end of this. We do have recordings of this webcast out on our YouTube channel that Jerry mentioned, as well as an update I did last week for the integrity controls environment, products, image focus, and the standalone and the control editor. There's other webcasts out there as well. One of the things, if you go out to our channel, I'd like you to take a look at something called the ICE Direct YouTube's videos out there. You can think of 2021 as a year of modernization here at New Era. So we've made improvements to standalone environment, as you saw. There's been improvements made to image focus in the control editor that are in the other update. But there's a totally new approach to letting you manage the integrity controls environment and its data space, all the information, all the data created by all the products. And that's something called ICE Direct. ICE Direct will be a interface into that data space from a web-enabled browser. And there are videos out there now that will show you what we're doing. It's not ready